Okay, I'm going to get started by just welcoming all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. Today is our group learning program where at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. I come together with students, guide you in a meditation session, but then I usually teach a topic to be able to help you guys understand the path to enlightenment. Each Sunday we go chapter by chapter in our book. It's titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. And this week we're in chapter 22, which is titled Mental Health, a Modern Day Delusion. This is where it helps you to be able to understand things like ADHD, ADD, OCD, anorexia, bulimia, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, all these different things that you maybe have heard about where people are maybe taking medications and using things like that. There's actually solutions for all of these things in the teachings of the Buddha. So I'm going to guide you guys in a meditation session. Then we're going to move into this talk on the health of your mind, because that's what the Buddha is teaching you to do, is to be able to get to this point where the mind is actually enlightened, where it's been trained to no longer experience any discontent feelings. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of this can be eliminated from the mind through training of the mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. If you guys would like to join in, we have the chanting sheets over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself and chant along if you like. After the chanting, I'm going to come in with some guidance to be able to guide you, where I'm almost essentially instructing you and teaching you how to meditate while we're actually meditating. But then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're all meditating together. Then we're going to come out of that with some more chanting. And that's where I'll start today's class, and I'll walk you guys through helping you to understand about mental health as it relates to the teachings of the Buddha. So feel free to take whatever position you like to make yourself comfortable. After I do the chanting, I'll come in and guide you in the meditation. And it's important to understand that this chanting, it isn't a rite or ritual or ceremony or prayer or anything like that. You're not worshiping the Buddha. These chants just help to ease our mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Wat Tung Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso emakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokawitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusarang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Once the breath is well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหะเกวาโอตังมหาเกวันหังอาปิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวัตตาธัมโมดามังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตูอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to everyone here. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. This is breathing mindfulness meditation. This is a meditation that's training your mind to let go. The goal of this meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. Oftentimes people think that's the case when they hear the guidance and the instruction for the meditation. But in reality, what it's doing is training your mind to let go. Because the underlying cause that's causing the mind to experience things like anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings is that the mind is holding on. It craves permanence. And I'm going to help you guys to be able to see this through the teachings of the Buddha when we first get started here. Because as I shared, our topic this evening is mental health, a modern day delusion. This is where I help you to be able to see how it's not brain chemistry that is causing the difficulties and struggles that people experience with things like bipolar disorder or depression or OCD or ADHD, ADD, and all these different things. It's actually that the mind is untrained. And when you actually train the mind, you can actually experience complete solution to the problem. You can get to the point where you no longer experience those symptoms. So if you or people you know are having difficulties with those things, or if they're taking medications and things of that nature, maybe that's where they're at right now. But once you start learning and you train your mind, you can actually get to a point where your mind's completely stable and steady. Because what enlightenment is where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you no longer experience any discontent feelings. All the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all of that is eliminated from the mind because you've uprooted the causes and conditions that are producing it. So you need to first understand what's causing the mind to experience these discontent feelings in order to be able to eliminate it. So there's a teaching called the Four Noble Truths, where in 4 simple statements, you can understand the problem in the mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. And all the Buddha's teachings, they're independently verifiable. You're not believing any of his teachings. So you shouldn't believe anything that I share. You shouldn't believe anything anybody else shares. In order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to cultivate wisdom through learning, investigating, and examining teachings, to reflect on those, to independently verify if they're true or false. And then you practice the teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life. And this is what's actually training the mind, where the real transformation is occurring. You're going to need more than just meditation to be able to train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state, but you can learn that gradually, slowly but surely. And tonight what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share an overview of this very first teaching of the Buddha called the Four Noble Truths, because we're now in chapter 22 of this program. It's a 7-month program, and I'm going to be restarting it on January 4th. And we're just kind of finishing up these last few weeks that we actually are finishing up this entire book. And now we're going to restart it from the very beginning on January 4th. And you can attend here at the temple, but you can also attend online no matter where you are in the world. I live stream this program at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. on Sundays and Wednesdays. And then if you can't attend live, you can watch the recordings because it's on YouTube, Facebook, it's on our podcast and all these different places. But what you're doing is you're slowly developing an understanding of the path to enlightenment. And I've taught the Four Noble Truths many times, but I know there's people here and there's people online that have never actually learned those with me. But there's also some people that have actually learned them. So this will be a good refresher for those people. But for those of you guys that haven't learned this will be kind of just like a brief overview to be able to help you understand the Four Noble Truths, because that's what you need to be able to do in order to be able to understand this topic of mental health and why you can actually solve it through training the mind. You need to first understand the problem that the Buddha discovered, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. This is the very first teaching of the Buddha. If you didn't understand this, you wouldn't understand anything else that the Buddha was teaching. So while I'm going to do a brief little overview tonight, at some other time, you might decide that you'd like to go much more in depth with this particular teaching. And that's what I'm going to be doing this week. Monday through Friday, I have a course from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's called The Foundation and the Path to Enlightenment, where I'm going to be walking students through in a way that you can independently verify all the fundamental teachings, all the foundational teachings that help you to get on the path to enlightenment. So tonight, because we're in this program, I'm just going to give you an overview, but there's opportunities for you to learn more. And all these programs are available at no cost. All the books, all the resources, everything you need is available for you. So in order to understand the Four Noble Truths, you need to first understand the 3 universal truths. The 3 universal truths are like building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. What the Buddha is doing is he's explaining to you the way the world is. That's what his teachings are. They're not rules and commandments. They're not a bunch of beliefs. There's not anybody telling you what you should or shouldn't be doing. They're not rites and rituals, ceremonies, worship and prayer and all that kind of stuff. He's teaching you how to awaken to the wisdom of the world around you, these natural laws. Because when you live in a world that you don't understand, you'll struggle. You'll have difficulties. Just like we did with the natural law of gravity, where we struggled with that because we didn't understand it. So we fell down, we hit our head, we bumped our elbows. We struggled because we didn't understand the world that we lived in. We had difficulties, but slowly but surely we cultivated wisdom about that natural law, and now we make wise decisions related to that. And that's why we can navigate the world peacefully, but we never believed in the natural law of gravity. We could see the truth for ourselves. We don't believe it, we can see it, right? If you take something and you drop it, you can see there it is. That's the natural law of gravity right there. You don't believe in it. So these things that I'm teaching you are part of what's called the natural laws of existence. And you don't believe these things. You need to be able to independently verify it so you can understand the way the world truly is. So for example, this first one, the universal truth of impermanence. The Buddha is teaching you that everything around you is constantly changing, that things arise, they change, and they fade away. This is called a conditioned object. Again, this is a building block that's going to help you to understand the Four Noble Truths. That's why I'm teaching it to you. But you need to be able to independently see this for yourself by looking around the world to verify if it's true. Everything you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, it's all impermanent. It's constantly changing. So you can look around the world and see that for yourself. You can see this physical body is constantly changing. Your relationships are constantly changing. The weather is constantly changing. You can look at the floor of the temple. You see the wood planks. Some of them are longer or shorter. Some of them are different colors than others, different texture. This is all impermanence. It's constantly changing, right? So you're going to need to be able to independently verify this for yourself and see your relationships are changing, the weather's changing, your bank account's changing. All these things are constantly changing. And this is a building block that you'll need when we get to the Four Noble Truths. The second universal truth is called discontentedness. If you studied the teachings of the Buddha in other places, you might have heard them refer to this as suffering. I don't use this word because it doesn't accurately describe what the Buddha was teaching. He was teaching what the unenlightened mind experiences, and it's referred to as conditioned feelings, that the mind, based on some condition in the unenlightened state, is going to experience conditional pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria, or conditioned painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, or feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. I put boredom and loneliness here, but some people say that's very painful for them. So you could put that in the painful category. But shyness is a good example. It's not painful. It's not pleasant. It's neither painful nor pleasant. Or if someone you don't know came in the public transportation and sat really, really close to you and your body was touching their body, you probably say, it's not painful. It's not pleasant. The mind is kind of dissatisfied or uncomfortable in this situation. That's the third feeling. So the unenlightened mind experiences three feelings: pleasant, painful, and neither painful nor pleasant. And these are conditioned feelings that based on some condition, you're going to experience a certain feeling, right? So if you get really happy when it's sunny outside, that's conditional happiness. Based on the condition that it's sunny, you will now be happy. But the problem with this is the sun is not permanent. That when it then rains, you'll be sad or frustrated. You'll experience conditional painful feelings. Or if you get really happy when your bank account balance is up here, well, that's not permanent. So your feeling of happiness isn't permanent. So when it goes down here, you'll be sad or frustrated. This is why you haven't been able to experience permanent happiness in your life, because the mind is experiencing conditional feelings, that the mind is forming inner feelings based on some condition in the world. And those conditions are impermanent. So you'll understand this more when we get to the Four Noble Truths. Then there's the universal truth of non-self. And by the way, you can independently verify this, right? Because you know your mind's unenlightened. Are there any feelings that you experience that don't fit into one of these three categories? That's how you independently verify this, right? And again, I'm just giving you an overview here. Then there's this universal truth of non-self. This is actually a solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. There's these 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. This is actually the solution to the very first one. The very first pollution in the mind is called personal existence view. This is where the mind clings to the body or to the mind, to the self-image or the self-identity, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. The mind is confused. It thinks that this body is you, or that this mind is you. So for example, if you've ever been in a social situation and you spilt something on your clothing and you were embarrassed, this was your personal existence view. The mind was clinging to a self-image, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And when your clothes are clean, you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived, you'll be happy about that. But then when you have spaghetti sauce or chocolate ice cream all over your clothing, now you're not being perceived the way you want to be perceived, and you'll be frustrated or annoyed or embarrassed or something like this. Or if you've ever looked in the mirror and you saw a wrinkle or a mole or a pimple or a gray hair, or you started losing your hair and you were shaken up by that, that's your personal existence view. Clinging to this body, wanting to be perceived by others a certain way, and you can only be happy when you're being perceived that way. Or maybe you're like me when I was a kid. I used to get out gel and mousse, and I used to run it through my hair and try to get every little hair in exactly the right spot before I go to school. And then sometimes I would do this for so long, I'd miss the school bus, right? Because I was trying to get every little hair in the right spot. And I didn't feel comfortable going outside until every little hair was in the right spot. Or you might have stood in front of your closet and thought, who am I going to see today? And how do I want to look? And then you put on different sets of clothing, trying to get to the point where you felt comfortable going outside. This is the personal existence view. Clinging to this body, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way, thinking that this is you and who you are. But there's also a self-identity that the mind oftentimes clings to based on your culture, ethnicity, sexual orientation, nationality, job, or occupation, that your mind will cling to this, thinking that this is who you are. So you might think like, I am American, or I am Indian, or I am Lithuanian, or I am Mexican, or I am Japanese, or I am Chinese. Any of this I am around your culture, ethnicity, sexual orientation, nationality, job, or occupation. Anything your mind can cling to is who you think you are as a person. And now the mind wants to be perceived a certain way. So if you cling to the identity of I am American, now when you're at a restaurant and 2 tables over, somebody's talking about Americans and they're talking very fondly. And it's like, wow, they're talking about me. You get all these pleasant feelings, right? But now 2 tables over, they're saying something degrading or disrespectful, or they're diminishing people from the country that you come from. Well, if you have this identity in your mind that I am this, and now they're talking about that, you're going to think they're talking about you, and now you're going to get angry and frustrated, right? Or say you've been in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend, or a husband or a wife, and you think, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am a husband, I'm a wife. Now, when you're in a relationship, there's a certain level of comfort because you're in that role. But then when you guys break up, the mind doesn't identify with I am single. And the mind doesn't feel comfortable like this. So it feels like the best way to solve that is hurry up and get right back into another relationship. The mind's clinging and holding on to this identity of who you think you are as a person. So what the Buddha teaches you is that there is no self, that the idea that this body or this mind is who you are as a person, it's not true. But the mind is just clinging to it with its confusion, with its misunderstanding. And as long as you cling to this body or this mind, thinking that this is who you are, you can't get to permanent peace and permanent joy. So in order to get beyond this, you need to be able to realize non-self, where you realize that this body is not you, this mind is not you. Even the choices and decisions that you make, it's not you, it's not who you are. These are just things that are occurring. There is a body, there is a mind, and it's come together for this existence, but that doesn't define who you are. We call the combination of this body and a mind as a human being or a person, right? But the Buddha is teaching you not to cling to any of this stuff, wanting it to be permanent. Because if you cling to this body, wanting it to be permanent, you're going to be shaken up when you realize it's not permanent, right? When you get a wrinkle, a mole, a pimple, gray hair, you start losing your hair, you'll be shaken up by that, right? Or if you have a certain self-identity in your mind, if you cling to that as who you are, like I am a police officer. Well, as long as you're doing that job, you'll feel great. But then when you get laid off, when you get fired, when you get injured and you can't do that job anymore, you'll feel like less of a person. You'll feel unwhole, right? So the Buddha is helping you to see how to protect your mind by realizing non-self. And this takes training to be able to do this. So this universal truth of non-self is just helping you to understand the wisdom that there is no self. This body is not you. This mind is not you. But of course, people have been accumulating this all throughout their life. It's oftentimes very hard for somebody to be able to come to terms with that this body is not you and this mind is not you. So there's more training and there's more understanding that you need here in order to be able to realize non-self. But this was just a little bit of an introduction to it. So I'm going to pause a few times tonight to be able to see what questions you guys have. If you guys have questions on any of these 3, you're more than welcome to ask those, even though I'm just doing this brief little overview. Here at the temple, we have microphones in the white bowl. If you would get a microphone, just bring it back to your seat, press the gray button. You're going to see the lights come on. And then if you could hold that up to your chin, we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online too. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then you can keep these with you because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question and you can share it. And then if you could turn it off when you're not using it, that'll help us to not get feedback through the speakers. And then anybody who's online, if you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can put your questions in the comment section. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you like that way. So does anybody here or online have any questions about the 3 universal truths? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. Oh, here's one on YouTube. Let's see what we've got here. Okay, someone says, do you consider dementia or Alzheimer's disease a mental deterioration or medical condition of the brain? Can they be cured or the effects reduced through meditation and living the Eightfold Path? Let's talk about that after I share more content of what we're going to be discussing tonight, because then you'll actually understand the answer a bit better. But let's get to that one. If I don't bring that up, be sure to bring it back up again, and I'll help you with that. Okay, all right. So now one more little building block, which is understanding what craving, desire, attachment is, or wants or expectations. What this is this is the mind longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of its affection, thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. It's like an unquenchable thirst. The mind's pulling towards the objects of its affection. So if you've ever been at the mall and you saw a brand new pair of shoes and you're like, oh, brand new pair of shoes. Yes, yes, yes. I can't wait to get those on my feet. It's not the shoes themselves that is the craving, desire, attachment. It's the way the mind's longing, yearning for it, thinking that somehow it's going to provide lasting satisfaction. It's kind of like the mind thinks, I don't like the way I'm feeling right now. What do I need to feel better? Oh, a boyfriend or girlfriend, that'll fix everything. Let me get one of those. And now the mind will chase after that. And then you'll get one and you'll be happy. But then over time, you'll get frustrated, agitated. You'll be right back in the same feelings that you had initially. Then the mind's like, what do I need? More money. That's what'll fix everything. Let me get some more money. So now the mind will chase after that for a while. And you'll be happy initially when you get your more money, but then that'll fade away too. And then the mind's like, what do I need to do to feel better? I got it. Let me go to Thailand. That'll fix everything. Let me go to Thailand, right? And now you might hurry up and go to Thailand and be so excited to go to Thailand, right? And then when it's time to go back home, you're like, oh, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back, right? So this is the mind longing, yearning, thinking something external is going to provide lasting satisfaction, and it tries to grab onto it in order to get pleasant feelings. So do you guys know what I'm talking about here? You experience this? Yeah. Okay. So you know what this is. Okay. So this is craving, desire, attachment. Now we can understand the Four Noble Truths just in a summary format, just to kind of refresh some of you guys' memory, but also just to kind of give you an overview for the others. So the first noble truth is explaining the problem in the mind. The second noble truth is explaining the cause of that problem. The third is explaining the elimination of it. And the fourth is explaining the complete perfect plan. You can actually have a breakthrough here today where you can see once and for all what is causing your discontent feelings. Because what the mind typically does is it blames other people for the feelings that you're experiencing. But what you can see through the Four Noble Truths is that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. But you need to be able to independently verify this for yourself. Don't believe what I'm sharing. So the first noble truth is explaining the problem. Everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness, meaning those conditioned feelings, that based on some condition, you're then going to experience a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, or a neither painful nor pleasant. And when you're experiencing this, your mind is shaken up. It's unsteady. It's uncalm. And now you can't make wise decisions. If you've ever been so excited that you tripped and fell, or you dropped something and broke it, you can see your mind was shaken up. It was unsteady during that period of time. Or if you've been angry and frustrated, having painful feelings, and you were bitter and harsh and hostile to people, you can see it damaged your relationships. Or maybe you had neither painful nor pleasant feelings. Maybe you were shy, right? Maybe you were giving a presentation at work and you were shy, right? Or you were having anxiety, and this hindered you from being able to perform in the best way that you could. Right? So as long as your mind's experiencing conditioned feelings based on some condition, your mind's going to be shaken up. And then you're not going to be able to make wise decisions, which produces wholesome results in your day-to-day life. So this is the problem that the Buddha discovered. The cause of this problem is Discontentedness is caused by craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection. If the mind gets what it wants, it experiences pleasant feelings because it's craving permanence. It's wanting things to be permanent when it lives in an impermanent world. So if the mind chases after something and it gets what it wants, it gets happy, it gets excited. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, it gets painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. And when this anger is arising, it will typically blame it on other people. You might have pushed people away out of your life. This is called aversion, maybe friends or family. You thought they were the ones who were causing your painful feelings, so you pushed them away. Or you might have been bitter, harsh, and hostile to people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, trying to fear that being into doing things your way. Or the third thing you might do is you might put your expectations on people and try to control people and force people to do things a certain way. This is, again, the mind trying to get its cravings fulfilled. So I'll just give you a simple example that I tend to use. Like, let's just say that you bought a brand new car and you were so excited with that brand new car. You've been saving for like 5-10 years for this car. And now you drive it to the store, you park it, and you go inside and you come out, and there's a scratch on your car. You might be frustrated or angry. It's not the scratch that's causing the anger and the frustration. And it's not the person who scratched your car. That's not what's causing the frustration and the anger. What's causing it is the mind is craving permanence. It wants this car to look permanently beautiful when it's not possible for this car to look permanently beautiful. The paint's going to fade. The tires are going to need to be changed. The upholstery is going to get ripped and torn. If you crave permanence, when you're experiencing impermanence, your mind doesn't like that. And that's where the painful feelings come from. Oftentimes people think it's the other person, but it's actually from your own mind, craving permanence. You can see this if you look in your own life. You need to be able to see it for yourself. Because remember, you can't believe what I'm sharing with you. Take a recent situation where you've been angry or sad or frustrated. It could have been this morning or yesterday or last week. Look at that situation with these fresh eyes. What was it that your mind was longing and yearning for? What did you want? What did you expect? And if you would have got what you wanted, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get what you wanted, the mind experienced something like anger or sadness or frustration or some other discontent feeling. You should be able to look at this and see. But if you can't see for yourself, let me know, because I'm going to stop and ask questions or open up the questions here in a moment, because you need the help potentially. There's been plenty of students over the years that have asked me questions, because what I'm teaching you is that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. But you need to be able to see this truth for yourself, because if you go around the world continuing to blame other people for what you're experiencing, you'll never actually fix what's going on within your own mind. You'll just continue to be angry, stressed, having anxiety. You can actually opt out of this. The human being doesn't have to experience things like stress and anxiety and anger and frustration and all these other feelings. You can actually train your mind to completely eliminate it. But it starts with being able to see the cause of it. Because typically when people are having difficulties in their day-to-day life, they will try to change other people. So as long as you're doing that, you'll never actually address the real problem within your own mind. So if you can see the truth that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, then you can actually fix it. So here where I'm saying that the mind craves permanence while everything is impermanent, another way to say that is that the mind does not like change. The unenlightened mind doesn't like when things are changing. You can look at your life and see that when things were changing the most in your life, those were the biggest struggles and challenges that you were having. If you were changing jobs, if you were changing living locations, if you were changing relationships, those were some of the biggest challenging times during your day-to-day life throughout your entire course of your life. That when you were experiencing change, your mind was having a lot of difficulty with that. That's because the mind doesn't like change in the unenlightened state. Even when we're choosing to do it, the mind doesn't like it. It's like the mind is this third entity. There's the body, there's the mind, and then there's the person. The person might say, hey, we need to move over here, or we need to change our job. And the mind's like, I don't like that. I don't want to do that, because the mind's holding on. It's craving permanence. That's what the mind does in the unenlightened state. And that's what the second noble truth is bringing to your attention. But you need to be able to independently verify it for yourself. Because once you see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, the third noble truth makes complete sense to you. That if you eliminate craving, desire, attachment, you eliminate discontentedness. You need to eliminate your mind holding on and craving permanence, right? You can see this if you think back to maybe like a boyfriend or girlfriend that you got together with. When you guys first broke up, you might have been angry or frustrated or sad or lonely or bored, or you might have been missing this person. But at some point, your mind let go. You were like, you know what? If he wants to be with someone else, so be it. Or if she wants to move to another part of the world, so be it. And your mind let go. Prior to that, you were angry and frustrated or lonely or bored or missing this person. But at some point, your mind let go. And that's where you regained your peace and your joy. So if you eliminate the cause of the discontent feelings, you will eliminate the effect. The effect of having craving, desire, attachment is discontentedness. So if you eliminate the source, which is craving, desire, attachment, where the mind's holding on, craving permanence, you'll eliminate all your discontentedness. And that's why we were doing that breathing mindfulness meditation, that when the mind moves off the breath, you train your mind to let go. And now it comes back. And now it's there for a little bit, but then it moves off the breath again. And then you let go, and then you come back. So if you had to let go 10, 15, 20, 30 times during your meditation, this is very good for your mind, because your mind's learning how to let go, because it doesn't know how to do that. It craves permanence. So there's multiple teachings that the Buddha shares with you to help you eliminate your craving, desire, attachment, so you can eliminate discontentedness. And the things that he teaches you is in the fourth noble truth. It's called the Eightfold Path. This is the complete, perfect plan that's going to guide you in training your mind. This Eightfold Path is 8 individual factors that is helping you to be able to see how to train your mind on a day-to-day basis. This is just an image that's helping you to see it in summary format. But on Tuesday morning, I'm going to be teaching it thoroughly. I'm going to be walking through step by step over a 2.5-hour period of time and helping you guys see with the original words of the Buddha, what did he teach on this? Because this is the day-to-day training of how to train your mind. Meditation is one component of this, but you wouldn't be able to just meditate and get to enlightenment. You need all these other factors in order to be able to train your mind to enlightenment. So that's why you study all of these things. What we were just talking about now is called right view. The Four Noble Truths is right view. What right view is to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, the craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning. Wrong view would be to blame other people for the feelings that you're experiencing. That would be wrong view. And as long as you keep doing that, you'll never actually solve your problem. So it's not other people that are causing you to be angry or frustrated. I'll just give you one example. So one time a student contacted me. They said, David, I went to work the other day. My house looked beautiful. I came home after a hard day at work and I got frustrated and angry. My wife had this craft project all over the house and the house looked a wreck. And I got frustrated as soon as I walked in. How did my mind cause this? I wasn't even there. She's the one who messed up the house. Didn't she cause me to be angry? Nope, sure didn't. Your mind was craving permanence. You had this expectation that when you went to work, your house was going to look exactly the same when you came back home. And it's not possible, because the world is impermanent. Your house is not going to look the same every day when you come home. And now when your wife has all this craft project all over the house, your mind didn't like that impermanence. It didn't like that change. And now that's why you got frustrated, right? And your wife's going to put this project away. That's not permanent. She'll put it away, right? So you need to be able to see this through your own experiences, right? If you were so excited to go to Thailand and you just couldn't wait to get here, because, they have mango and sticky rice, massages, elephants, all these different things that you can enjoy. Well, when you get to the airport and your flight's delayed or canceled, you'll be frustrated. You'll be annoyed because the mind wants every airplane to take off on time, right? Especially the planes you're on. But the thing is that the world's impermanent. Not every airplane's going to take off on time, right? There's going to be crew issues, maintenance issues, weather issues. There's going to be problems. There's going to be issues along the way. This is impermanence. This is change. So I'm going to pause here and see if you guys have any questions about what's causing these feelings, because this is what's going to help you to understand the mental health, because there's people that have certain challenges and certain difficulties within their own mind, but they're not understanding what the true cause of the problem is. So the Buddha is helping you to be able to see what the true cause is, but you need to be able to independently verify it. So do you guys here or anybody online have questions about the Four Noble Truths and the cause of these discontent feelings? Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. All right, so now we can move into talking about mental health. Okay, so first, it's important to understand that the brain and the mind are two different things. The brain is the physical organ that's inside the skull. The mind is non-physical. It's non-tangible. You can't actually touch it or point to it because it's not physical in nature, right? Oftentimes in the West, we will point here when we talk about the mind. Thai people will touch their heart because they think about the mind being inside the heart. There's other cultures that think about the mind as being outside the body, like kind of like an outer shell on the body. It's actually, you can't point to it, that it's non-physical. You can't actually point to where this mind is. That it's not possible because it's not physical in nature. So there's a brain, which is the physical organ, and then there's the mind, which is non-physical, and there's a connection between the two of them, but it's important to be able to understand they're two separate things. They're completely separate. Because what people are doing when they're having sadness or anxiety or difficulty sleeping or any of these number of things, they're typically using medication to go in and tweak brain chemistry. They're tweaking the brain chemistry with pharmaceuticals, thinking that that's going to change something about the mind. But the cause of your sadness or lack of concentration or any number of other things that we could label as mental illness, the source of it is in the mind. It's not in the brain. Oftentimes people are told they have a defective brain, but that's not actually true. It's just that the mind is untrained. And I'll help you guys to be able to see that as we go through this. So the solution is not chemical based, that you can't just tweak brain chemistry in order to change what's going on in the mind. There's an effect to the mind, but there's not going to be a permanent solution by just tweaking the brain chemistry. The mind needs to be trained to let go. That's what's actually going to eliminate the discontent feelings that one is experiencing. So here's what I'll share. Like, let's just take some examples. Like, let's just say as a child, as you're growing up, you might have had some kind of trauma. This is what people usually call it, right? If there's some kind of traumatic event, let's just say you're physically abused as a child or you're sexually abused as a child. But now as an adult, you're having mental anguish about this. You're having a lot of sadness and despair because of what's happened in your childhood. What the mind's doing here is it's holding on to this experience that happened however many years ago. And now in the present moment, the mind is forming feelings based on that. So the mind is clinging to this experience. And people call it trauma. And sometimes people think that they can never overcome this. But you can. You can train your mind to let go and to no longer form feelings based on something that happened in the past. But most people don't know how to do this because they never actually learned it. They never cultivated the wisdom of how to clean up the mind. We learned how to clean the body when we were growing up. Our parents taught us that, but then we didn't necessarily learn the wisdom of how to clean the mind. And if you're going around the world where you haven't cleaned this body for 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, multiple years, you probably feel very uncomfortable not cleaning the body. So if you haven't cleaned the mind, then yeah, you're going to feel uncomfortable because everybody's had certain experiences as they've gone through life that the mind is clinging to. And now it's forming feelings in the present moment based on things in the past. But you can train your mind to let that go. And now in the present moment, you'll remember that those things happened, but you won't have feelings about it. You won't be sad or angry or frustrated. But again, an individual needs to learn how to do this. Or somebody might be diagnosed with bipolar disorder. If you guys are familiar with this, what happens is an individual typically goes up into this excited state that some people call mania. And now when they're in that state, they might be gambling, they might be having lots of sex, they might be shopping, they might be doing all these different things, and they're in this excited state. But then at some point they drop off into sadness and despair, right? What this is actually cause from is there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind. And now when the mind's craving that sex or that gambling or that shopping, the mind is getting what it wants and it's experiencing all this excitement. But then at some point, those cravings can't be sustained. And now when the mind's not getting its cravings fulfilled, the mind will drop off into sadness. And some people do this throughout their day. Their mind just goes up and down and up and down. Or over the course of multiple weeks and months, the mind can be in this elevated state for multiple days and weeks, and then it just kind of crashes after that. This is just the mind having craving, desire, attachment. And when they're getting fulfilled, there'll be excitement in the mind. And when it's not getting fulfilled, there'll be these painful feelings in the mind. So the mind is conditioned to believe through modern things that are being shared is that the brain is defective and that there's a problem in the brain and we need to go in and tweak brain chemistry, and that's going to solve some of these problems like ADHD or ADD or OCD or different things like this. This is part of what we refer to as wrong view, that it's not understanding the true cause of the problem and why people are experiencing these things. And as long as somebody has wrong view, they can never really apply the true solution to actually fix it. They'll still be tweaking brain chemistry, and they never actually get to a point where the mind is actually healed or the mind is actually cured, because there's no amount of brain chemistry, tweaking brain chemistry, that's going to stop the mind from clinging to that childhood trauma. That childhood experience of being abused sexually or physically. There's no amount of tweaking brain chemistry that's going to train the mind to stop forming feelings based on something that happened in the past. There's no amount of tweaking brain chemistry that's going to train this individual to stop craving or longing, yearning, and choosing to go have sex with lots of people or gambling or going shopping and trying to fulfill its cravings to be able to get excitement. There's no amount of tweaking brain chemistry that's going to do that, and then the mind's going to drop back off. So the cause of these discontent feelings is the untrained mind, that because the mind is not trained, that the individual doesn't have discipline of their mind, it's kind of shaking and unstable and unsteady and all over the place and forming feelings based on things that happened in the past, or its cravings, desires, attachments either getting fulfilled and you get excited, or not getting fulfilled and the mind experiences painful feelings. So there's a solution to this, but you need to be able to see more of what maybe you've been taught or that someone has shared with you, to be able to see that it's not brain chemistry that's causing this. So sometimes people are taught that their brain is defective. If you weren't sad before you went and saw somebody like a doctor, you'll be sad afterwards when they tell you your brain is defective, right? Your brain's not defective. It's just that your mind is untrained. There's nothing wrong with the brain. It's that the mind is just untrained. But if you've been told that your brain is defective, you could feel really bad about that, right? So if the brain is truly defective among human beings, right, then we would see that the population of people throughout the entire world, that we would see the same exact problems from one population of people to the other if the human brains are defective. So that means that if we have people in, say, like places like the USA or UK or Australia, that people are saying their brain is defective and that's why they're experiencing these difficulties and struggles, then we would see people here in Thailand experiencing the same thing. But this isn't what we see, that we don't see a mental health crisis here in Thailand because people grow up learning these teachings and training their mind. But in places that I mentioned, like US, UK, Australia, and other places that use these types of practices, people are having lots of difficulties and struggles. The anguish and the struggles that people are experiencing is 100% real, but the cause isn't brain chemistry. The cause is unknown to people. They're thinking it's brain chemistry, but it's actually not. But if it truly is a defective brain, we would see the same problems in one population of people as other population because the human brain is defective. Or if these modern mental health practices are actually helping, that we found a problem, the brain is defective, and now we found a solution, which is to introduce chemicals, then when we do that, we should see the cases of mental health problems and challenges decreasing, right? Because if we found a problem that the human brain is defective and now we found a solution to fix it, which is introducing chemicals, well, we should see the number of cases dramatically decreasing because we found the solution to the problem. But this isn't what we see. We see a proliferation and growth of mental health problems throughout the world, where more and more and more and more and more and more people are being diagnosed with mental health issues because we haven't actually understood the real true problem that people are misunderstanding. If these modern mental health practices are helping to solve a problem, then the places that they use these the most, those would be the most mentally stable and mentally fit people in the entire world, right? So if there's a defective brain that's among human beings, and we found the solution, which is to introduce chemicals in order to stabilize the mind and the brain, if that's true, then the places that use these practices the most, they would be the most mentally stable and fit people in the entire world because they've now figured out how to solve this. So places like the US, the UK, Australia, these are places that use this a lot. And there's other places too. If you're familiar with these populations, you can ask yourself, are these the most mentally stable, most mentally fit people that you see in the world, that their mind is very stable? Because if they've discovered a true problem and they've implemented a solution, then we would see that there would be a lot of stability in the mental health of this population of people because they're introducing these kinds of things. Here in Thailand, they have psychiatric medicine, and it's useful. There's actually certain situations where you can use psychiatric medicine. If you're familiar with what a psychosis is, if you've ever studied this or you've ever experienced it yourself, there's no amount of meditation or Four Noble Truths or Eightfold Path that is going to solve a psychosis. You're going to need to introduce medication to be able to bring that person's brain and bring their mind to some level of stability. But then at that point, that's where learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha are going to help train the mind to experience the peace and the joy. Whereas if people were learning the teachings of the Buddha from birth, like they do here in Thailand, we wouldn't see so many cases of psychosis and mental health disorders and what people are referring to as mental health disorders, right? So for people that haven't learned these teachings in the West, they're experiencing things like psychosis or, going to mental health hospitals because they don't know any other solution. So the Western cultures, they don't understand things like the Three Universal Truths or the Four Noble Truths or the Eightfold Path. They're thinking that the brain and the mind are the same thing. They're not understanding that they're actually two separate things, and you can't tweak brain chemistry in order to clean up the mind. You actually need to train the mind. So here in Asia, they understand these two separate things, and people train their mind. And that's why you see Asian people tend to have a more stable, a more fit mind because they're training their mind with these teachings. Where in the West, we don't have these teachings, so we don't see as much mental stability there. We're tweaking brain chemistry, thinking that we're going to affect the mind, when in reality, that's not the case. So there's the ability to clean all this up through training of the mind. You can learn to practice the teachings and create a well-trained, well-stable mind. But it takes time to gradually train the mind. And that's why it's helpful that we have these mental health medications, because there's going to be people that need them to be able to lift their mind up to the ability to then be able to receive training. But once someone's under training and they're actually learning and growing and developing their mind, this stability can come into the mind. Where someone can ultimately, if they create a stable mind, they can actually gradually decrease their medications. I would never tell them to do that or when to do that, but people themselves will be able to figure this out. If people are learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha and they experience the stability of their mind improving, they'll get to a point where they realize their mind is more stable. And with the support of their doctors, they can actually then decrease and ultimately eliminate their medication. This is happening quite a bit, that people who are learning with me, they might have started out with medications, but then as they're 6 months, a year into their journey and training their mind, they realize how stable and steady their mind is, and they start decreasing their medication and then ultimately even eliminating it. It's not just one person or two people. It's many, 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 many people are experiencing this. So if you or somebody you know are having difficulties with some of these mental illnesses, if you start training your mind with the teachings of the Buddha, you'll be able to see that it'll lift up and it'll become more and more stable. And at some point that you decide for yourself, if you would like to get off medication, you can actually slowly do that. But you're going to need to have the training in place first so that you can get get your mind up to that level of stability. You can eliminate this lifetime of being relegated to medications and costly therapies and things like this, because oftentimes people are really struggling with these things and the cost of them, and they may or may not even be working, depending on what the person's experience is with those things. You'll know the right time to decrease your medication. Again, it's not my place to tell somebody to do that, but they will know for themselves. And when they see their mind being more stable, they'll be able to do that. So what I'm going to do, and then I'm just going to stop because this is all I have to share with you and open up to whatever questions you have, is I'm going to share these different things that are labeled as mental illness, and I'm going to show you the connection to the teachings of the Buddha and how they can be resolved through the teachings of the Buddha. So let's start with this first one of ADHD or ADD. This is a situation where someone might be diagnosed with a lack of concentration and they have difficulties concentrating. And they might be told that it's a defect in their brain and they need to take this medication and that's the only thing that's going to solve it. Well, the thing that's happening here is the mind has just never been trained to have concentration. That's what the teachings of the Buddha are doing, is that you're training your mind, not the brain. You're training your mind to have concentration. If you grew up with the devices that they have nowadays, where their mind is jumping every 30 seconds to something new, right? That's what we have, like all these different apps and different things that people's minds are jumping around. If you grew up this way from the age of 2, 3, 4, 5, looking at phones and looking at tablets and computers, and your mind's jumping around, so many years, so many months like this. Well, when you get to school at the age of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you're sitting at school and the teacher's presenting a topic, you can't focus. You can't concentrate because your mind's never been trained that way to be able to focus and to be able to concentrate. It's not a defective brain. It's that the mind just hasn't ever learned how to concentrate, how to focus. So there's things like meditation and other training that you can employ to help the child to gain concentration and focus. If this child would have learned that early in life, they would have the focus. By the time they get to 10, 12, all that stuff, their mind would have already been able to be focused. But oftentimes people aren't learning this because, again, they're learning from their parents how to clean the body, but they're not learning how to clean the mind because parents just don't understand because they haven't grown up with these teachings. So this child at the age of 6, 8, 10, 12 years old might be diagnosed with this and kind of labeled as ADHD or ADD, and now the medications are being introduced. And sure, that creates some level of stability, but it never fixes the underlying problem, which is the mind hasn't been trained to focus and have concentration. It has craving for stimulation because the mind's been bouncing around, and now sitting there and focusing for 50 minutes with the teacher, it has difficulties doing that. So the mind, whether you're an adult or whether you're a child, can be trained to let go of this constant craving for stimulation and get the concentration in the mind. If someone has something like anorexia, bulimia, or some other eating disorder, this isn't a defect in the brain. What it is the mind has been conditioned to think of this particular image as beautiful. And now the individual thinks that that's what's beautiful. And now the mind's craving to look like that. And this is the mind's personal existence view, thinking that this body is who you are. And it's not understanding impermanence. The mind thinks everybody who's beautiful looks like this. And now the mind's craving to get to that. And you might resort to not eating or vomiting, forcing yourself to vomit or some other eating disorder in order to try to get to the point where you look like this, right? Well, if you look at these things, oftentimes the pictures that we see in magazines or in movies and stuff like that, they've all been photoshopped anyway. That's not even what the person really truly looks like in their day-to-day life. But our mind, as a young child or as early teenagers or even in adulthood, we can condition the mind to think that this is beautiful and we've got to make our body look like this. And if we don't look like this, we are now ugly. And the mind has difficulties with that and is trying to force this body to look like this because the mind's craving to look like that. Not the brain. There's nothing in the brain that's causing this. It's the mind craving to look like this and thinks that everyone who's beautiful looks like this. That's the craving for permanence. Even something like anorexia, or I'm not sorry, not anorexia, anxiety. Let's just say that I was in my career, and let's just say 2 weeks from now, I'm going to present something to my boss or my boss's boss. And now 2 weeks before, I'm really anxious. I'm having difficulty sleeping. I really want to do a good job here. I really want to show my boss how great of an employee I am. I really want a raise. I really want a promotion at my career. Well, now the mind is anxious because the mind's longing, yearning. It's craving to get something, and it can only be happy if it gets what it wants. And now with the thought that you're going to go in and you're going to perform badly in front of your boss, the mind doesn't like this and it's shaken up. That's what the anxiety is. There's no amount of medication that's going to fix that, right? You need to be able to train your mind to go in there and do a good job, do the best you can, and whatever your boss thinks, that's what they think. And you just put forth your best effort. And now if you go in and your boss thinks you did a great job, wonderful. Now you'll get your promotion. If your boss thinks you didn't do a good job, then you get feedback and you find out how to do better next time, right? And now maybe you'll get a promotion 6 months from now or a year from now, but it's not going to be right now. But if you have a craving for that money, or you have a craving for that promotion, or you have a craving for your boss to look at you in a certain way, your mind will be shaken up when you go in there and you don't perform the way you want to perform, because the mind's craving that permanence. It wants to look a certain way in front of the boss. So we could go through any number of these, and these are all in the book. This is actually a table that I took out of the book. We can go through any number of these, and we could actually look at each one of them, and I could help you to be able to see this, but you can do this yourself in the book. Like OCD here, this is the mind craving perfection. If you know what OCD is, this is obsessive compulsive disorder, where maybe the individual wants their house to look a certain way. Any little speck of dust, the person might freak out and they don't like it. They feel uncomfortable. This is the mind craving their house to look a certain way permanently. They're craving perfection. They might even go to their carpet and kind of brush the hairs on the carpet so they all lean in the same direction or something like this. It can be really difficult to live with this, but this isn't a defective brain. It's the mind craving permanence. It's the mind craving perfection, where the mind can be trained that, hey, your house can look this way, can look that way, can look this way, and it's okay. But the mind needs to learn how to let go. That's what the breathing mindfulness meditation is, and all the other teachings of the Buddha, training the mind to let go. Sometimes people even have things like suicidal thoughts, right? Like they want to kill themselves. This isn't a brain defect, but people will oftentimes introduce medications with that. Typically what's happening here is someone has painful feelings. They're having real painful feelings because of their craving. They're very sad and they want to get rid of their painful feelings. And if you talk to them, they really don't want to die. They just want to get rid of their painful feelings and they don't know how. They think that killing themselves is actually what's going to produce that. But it's not killing yourself that's going to eliminate your painful feelings. It's training your mind. So they don't know of any escape from their painful feelings. So they might think killing themselves is the way out and the way to solve these painful feelings. But that's not going to solve it. So there's a way to actually train the mind to eliminate the underlying cause that's producing these painful feelings, so that then you can get to a point where you enjoy your life and you enjoy the things that you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. So if you talk to people who have suicidal thoughts, they typically aren't truly interested in dying. They just want to stop the painful feelings, and they don't know how to do that. And they typically think about death as part of the way to stop the painful feelings. So there's no amount of tweaking brain chemistry that's going to take those feelings away. That's going to take those painful feelings away. It's eliminating the underlying cravings, desires, attachments. So there's all of these that you guys can look at in the book, but this is everything that I have to share with you guys, just kind of bringing to the attention of students now as we're getting towards the end of this program, that if you're struggling or challenged with any of these types of things, that there's solutions for you. And it's through training of the mind that you actually be able to experience relief with these things. And some of you guys, depending on how long you've been training with me, if you've been diagnosed with any of these things, and if you've been on medication, you might actually see some of the things that I'm talking about are true, that your mind is more stable, that it is more steady, that you maybe are thinking about decreasing your medication. When or if you ever do that is a choice for you to make in consultation with your doctor, but it's not uncommon for people to actually do that. So that's something that's possible as your mind becomes more stable and more steady. So do you guys have any questions here, or anybody online have questions about what I'm sharing with you guys? Looks like we have a question coming in here from Paul. Go ahead, sir.
David, is there any harm in seeking out um, mental health support short term while starting off early on the path?
No, there's no harm. Oh,
Thinking in turn. Can you hear me?
yeah, I heard you. I thought you were done. Sorry, Paul.
No, it's just to say that, in the short term, I'm talking,
Mm-hmm.
Say dealing with things like depression or anger management, emotional problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not suggesting drugs, but I'm suggesting psychological
Mm-hmm.
support during the short term. Do you see that as, would you recommend that, or would you recommend against that in the short term?
I wouldn't recommend for it, or I wouldn't recommend against it, because it's not my place to tell somebody what they should or shouldn't do with their life. If somebody thinks that going to a therapist or going to a psychiatrist or any of these things would be helpful, go for it. That's their choice. But what I'm helping people to be able to understand is that the ultimate solution that's going to solve that isn't going to be found in medication, because there's no amount of medication that's going to clean up your mind and get you to the point where the mind's completely peaceful and joyful. But if somebody would like to go do any of those types of things, whether it's seeing a talk therapist or a psychiatrist or any kind of therapies, that's their choice. It's their life. It's their decisions. I'm here to support them either way. As they learn and practice these teachings, they're going to see their mind becoming more peaceful and more joyful. In fact, many of the students that I've been talking about here that are experiencing the things that I'm describing, their psychiatrists, their doctors, their therapists found out about the Buddhist teachings through them, that they were learning and practicing and training their mind. And 6 months in, 1 year in, the doctor is like, what are you doing? Why is your mind so stable? Or their therapist is like, what have you been up to? I'm noticing that you're thinking more clear, that the way that you're interacting in the world is improved. What have you been doing? And they're like, oh, I've been studying and practicing the teachings of the Buddha. So some of these medical practitioners are finding out about the teachings of the Buddha through their patients. So I wouldn't ever, stop anybody from doing any of those kinds of things, because each decision that you're making is up to you. I don't stop anybody or restrain anybody from doing anything, but just as people are going down this path, they can have the information to understand that there's not going to be a permanent solution in tweaking brain chemistry, but there might be a certain amount of that somebody needs in terms of therapy or medications in order to get to the point where they even can study something like this.
Okay, so yeah, I'm not referring to drugs or anything like that, but just talk therapy, as you suggested, as you mentioned, I should say. There's no harm in it while on the path, as long as you continue to follow the path as you're presenting, as you're teaching it.
Yes, that's true. Although sometimes, talk therapy, they will have you keep revisiting your past. They will sometimes blame what you're experiencing on other people. You need to be cognitive of this. Of course, there's some therapists out there that understand the teachings of the Buddha very well, and they can actually help you and complement what it is that you're learning. But depending on where they're coming from in their practice, they might actually keep having you revisit the past and keep reliving that over and over and over again, which isn't necessarily helpful, in my opinion, for your mind. Or they might kind of promote wrong view, where they might be blaming your anger or frustration on your wife or your husband or something like this. And they might be trying to teach you to change those people, but that's not going to lead to your peace and your joy. So as long as you're aware of those kinds of things, when you're with these types of people that you're doing talk therapy with, you'll be able to see the truth of what's really important.
Yeah, that's the thing. If I were to pursue something like that, I got to make sure that it's in line with the teaching, and it's not having me go down the path of revisiting the past and blaming, traumas and previous histories, and or blaming others. So that's good, David. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Looks like you have a question here.
Yeah. David. My name's Simon. Nice to meet you.
Hello.
I'll get to my question, but just quite blown away. I've been following you for a few years. Never quite got up to Chiang Mai till now, but I feel like I'm in the middle of some crazy therapy session. It's just mind-blowing. I've never really touched on this particular topic. I've been through the teachings that you've been teaching, but this one topic, the first time that I actually come, means a lot to me. I've struggled most of my life with mental health and alcohol and stuff like that. But about 6 years ago, I stopped, actually during COVID. I was in Bangkok and COVID was just hitting, so I went to Sri Lanka, and then the drinking got out of control, and then I suddenly quit one day and I'll never touch it again. But the irony is that the minute I gave up alcohol and had all this free time under lockdown in Sri Lanka, I took up the Buddhist teachings and started getting deep into this and meditation and yoga, and never looked back, you know. So it's great, and thank you for all your work there.
You're welcome.
So I suppose one question is, do you dive deeper into this particular topic in terms of how to go about continuing with one's own self-development regarding mental health and things like that? And a side note to that would be, would your meditation practice be any different if you were targeting, you know, trying to fix your mind a bit more, sort of, or would the meditation still be the same, breathing in through the nose, out through the nose, the same style of meditation? Or you were saying you're doing another course on this topic coming up this week. Do you go deeper in depth onto this particular topic and any meditation practices targeting this particular topic? Or would it be just your regular meditation practice would do that?
Sure. So sometimes if you look at what the Buddha taught, somebody might describe him as like the world's foremost expert on mental health. Because if you look at his teachings, that's what he's teaching you. He's teaching you how to train your mind and get to a very stable and steady state in your mind. He basically took human psychology and he boiled it down to a common denominator that everybody can understand, that common people can understand. So every single thing the Buddha is teaching you is about mental health and how to get to a stable mental health. If somebody's been labeled with any of these things here, there's no changes that's going to change the path and what needs to happen to get to stability, because it's the same underlying cause. Even if someone's having moderate sadness every once in a while versus some of these deeper things like maybe major depression or bipolar or some of these other things, those are just labels of categories of symptoms that you can look at and you can see through the teachings of the Buddha exactly how to solve it. But you don't have to do anything special in terms of your meditation or any of your other training. It's all exactly the same. A person who's been labeled with any of these things and hasn't been labeled with any of these things, they could sit side by side in the same classes, and all the same things that you learn are going to be applicable to you. So what I'm going to be teaching this week, Monday through Friday from 9 to 3, all that stuff is the foundation that you need to really solve any of this stuff. But also just for someone who's looking for concentration and focus and to get to enlightenment, it's all the same exact stuff, even if they haven't been diagnosed or labeled with any of these things. Mm-hmm. Okay, I see this question in YouTube that I didn't answer initially. I said I would come back to it. So the question here from Curtis is, do you consider dementia or Alzheimer's disease a mental deterioration or medical condition of the brain? I don't know a whole lot about dementia. I know that there's definitely changes that are happening in the brain and is affecting the person. And once somebody is headed in that direction, it's very hard to reverse those effects. You know, obviously scientists are looking to be able to try to solve some of those types of things. But for somebody who's trained their mind really well, they will never experience dementia. So like, for example, the Buddha, when he died, he was 80 years old. And oftentimes we think that old age means that there's going to be a deterioration of the mind, not necessarily dementia, but we typically associate old age with a deterioration of the brain and the mind. This isn't actually true. It's only true for someone who hasn't trained their mind. If someone hasn't trained their mind, as they get older, they're going to deteriorate mentally and, of course, obviously physically. But if you look at the teachings of the Buddha and what was documented through his lifetime, his mind was just as sharp when he was 80 years old as it was when he was 35, when he actually got to enlightenment. When he got to enlightenment at the age of 35, his mind was performing optimally because he had gotten to enlightenment. By the age of 80, his mind was performing exactly the same. There was no deterioration. And for anybody who's gotten to enlightenment or headed in that direction, you can see that it's a permanent mental state and your mind won't deteriorate. So while dementia is really unfortunate, and I don't know that there's anything that can reverse those effects once somebody's headed in that direction, if somebody's trained their mind prior to that, then they would never get to the point where the mind is experiencing dementia. Because when you're training the mind, remember, the mind and the brain are two different things. When you're training the mind, there is an effect to the brain. There's researchers and scientists that are measuring this stuff now, because during the lifetime of the Buddha, they couldn't measure it. But nowadays we can measure this kind of stuff, that we have MRIs, we have CAT scans, we have other devices and things like this, that they're actually seeing the positive effects to the physical structures of the brain that they're actually changing when somebody is training their mind. Remember, these are two different things, but there's a connection between them. When I was training really deeply, I actually heard some of these changes inside the skull. It was like, I could actually hear it and I could physically feel it, because I used to walk around with pressure in my skull. I used to have migraine headaches about 3 to 5 times a week, to the point of vomiting sometimes. And I had this intense pressure in my skull. But after training the mind through the teachings of the Buddha, I rarely get a headache. If I do, it's usually about air pollution. I just breathe a little bit too much air pollution or something like that. It's like maybe a couple times a year. That's about it, right? So there's no pressure in the skull. There's no migraine headaches anymore. There's no vomiting anymore. Where I used to get those kinds of things 3 to 5 times a week, right? So through training the mind, there will be an effect to the brain. But once the individual is experiencing the symptoms of dementia, I haven't seen any students that are learning with me to that point that we can see whether it reverses those effects or not. Because typically, by the time they're headed deeper into dementia, they're really having trouble to remember things. And in order to be able to train your mind to enlightenment, you need to remember the teachings. You need to commit them to memory. But this would be an interesting area to research and be able to see. But again, what I would encourage people to do is learn early in life. And this is what the Buddha did too. The earlier in life that you learn, the better. My son started learning when he was 6 years old. We were teaching him things before that, but now he's 13. And I started formally teaching him when he was 6. This kid hardly ever gets angry. Like, I haven't seen him angry in multiple years. I've seen him a little bit annoyed or agitated here and there, maybe like once every 3 months or so. But that's about it. He's having a completely different life than I had when I was growing up. Because when I was growing up, I was sad and angry and frustrated all the time. But he doesn't have that kind of life because his mind has been trained and he did that training. So now at the age of 13, he's going through life without sadness, without despair, without loneliness and boredom and all these kinds of things. During the lifetime of the Buddha, children were getting to enlightenment as early as age 7. Can you imagine going through life from the age of 7, never being angry, never being frustrated or sad, never having loneliness or boredom? That would have been a beautiful thing, right? So there's ability for people to train when they're young, because when you're young, your mind isn't as polluted. You don't have as strong of pollutions. So it's actually much easier to see improvement. Whereas once we get older, it's a lot more challenging. It's still possible, of course, but it's just more challenging for us because we have more pollution in our mind. But that, I don't really know much about dementia there, Curtis. Let's see, there's some more. Can they be cured or the effects reduced through meditation and living the Eightfold Path? I haven't seen anybody, like I mentioned, that has done that. So it would be interesting to see. I mean, it's worth a shot, right? If there's somebody that is headed in that direction of dementia and they still have capabilities to learn and train their mind, it'd be wonderful for them to do so. There's no harm that's going to be experienced because of it. It could only be beneficial for them. So it would be interesting to see how far they can go. I have some students that have different things. There's one particular student who lives here in Chiang Mai. He doesn't mind me talking about this, and obviously I'm not using his name. So he actually had Parkinson's disease when he first started studying with me. He was on 8 different medications, and he's been studying with me now for almost 3 years, I think it is. And last time he talked to me, he said that he gets discontent like once every 6 months, right? And he reduced his medications down to like 2 or 3. And he said he's looking to get off of those pretty soon too. And this was, probably 4 or 5 months ago that he told me this, right? So I didn't tell him to reduce his medications. He just did it on his own. He saw that his symptoms were improving. So after just, kind of like a year of training, he told me that he already started reducing his medication. Now he's 3 years into this, and he's only experiencing discontentedness once every 6 months. And he's reduced his medications, last I heard, down to, maybe 2 or 3 medications. So there's things like Parkinson's disease that the teachings of the Buddha are helping, because remember, you're training the mind, but it's affecting the brain. So any of these things that we're now struggling with in day-to-day society that are brain-based, that training the mind would only be helpful for that. So dementia, I could see that it potentially could help, but it's just a matter of that individual being able to remember the teachings enough to be able to then practice them. All right, so it looks like Kristen and Ted might have a question. Go ahead, guys.
David, it's Ted. Good evening. First, I'm very envious of your son Bailan at 13 years old, enjoying the teachings. But I'll work on that separate issue. Just a example of independently verifying the fact that I was on medication for low-grade depression for a long time. And physically, it started to become challenging, and I weaned myself off and stopped taking it probably, I don't know, not 8 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago. And come to find out, things are pretty okay right now, and just as good, if not better, than when I was taking it. So I think the only major change in my life has been trying to incorporate more of the teachings into my life. So it's nice to have the experience to verify things that I learned here in my life. And so I just thought I'd mention that. It's good stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Ted. Pleased to hear that you're experiencing improvement, because it's been a little over a year by now, I think, that you've been learning and growing. So that's great to hear. All right. I don't see any other questions anywhere. By the way, Ted, I put you up on the big screen. It's the first time I ever did that. I'll take you back off. All right. All right. So I don't see any other questions anywhere. So I'm just going to end by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for those of you here and online. If you guys would like to learn more, there's plenty of opportunities to do that. Next week, we're going to be in chapter 23 of our book. It's titled Symbolism of the Teachings, Reminders Through Imagery. This is where I help students to understand the symbols that they experience when you go visit temples and you go visit and you see artwork and things like this, because the teachings of the Buddha are embedded in these symbols, like this one behind me. For somebody who understands what this is, there's actually real meaning behind it. So the Buddha used to use these kinds of things to help refresh people's memory of his teachings. So I'm going to help you to understand some of the common symbols. And I do this on tours that I take people on too. Like this Friday, I'm going to be taking students out on tours. But in terms of this program on Sunday, we're going to be learning about the symbolism next Sunday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. And then, as you guys heard, all this week, I'm going to be teaching. And then we have the same program every Sunday where I'm going chapter by chapter in this book. And you guys can get this for free by downloading it from our website, by taking it and go printing it. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can get it on Amazon if your country has access to Amazon. So if you have any questions you'd like to let me know, you're welcome to come talk with me. Otherwise, have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.